yeah, 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 look, ball player, no watching from the side. Said that you got him next, well go ahead and show him why. No limits in the sky, go ahead and take your shot. This one is for the city, let's show him how we rock. Coaches used to call my phone, what you doing, just got home.
What up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Up Next, where we tell you what's next or who's up next in youth sports and basketball particularly, especially with this podcast. And we have a very, very special guest today, a legend in the game. As he just told me, 30 years in the game, which is no joke. We got Etop Udo-Ema. Did I pronounce that correctly?
That's Etop.
Etop.
Hey, everybody butchers it. It's all good.
See, I knew better. I'm gonna say it again. Etop Udo-Ema joins us. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great, man. Doing awesome. How you doing?
I'm hanging in there. I can't complain.
Hey, is this New York City or is this upstate? What is this? Is this a city? Is this Brooklyn?
It's Brooklyn, baby.
Hold on.
Yeah, let's get that straight real quick, man.
I got my legacy program in New York, and I'm just trying to figure out if you guys are upstate guys or city guys. You know.
Listen, man.
We city guys, baby.
Brooklyn to Compton relationship
right,
we're building right now, man. What we doing? You see my background, man.
Yeah,
that's for you, baby.
Yeah, he fronting. That's not Brooklyn right there. I never seen Brooklyn look like that. But we're based out in Brooklyn. We got love for upstate too, everywhere else in New York, and of course Cali, where you are. Etop is head of Compton Magic. Started that team in 1995. Am I correct?
Yeah, in that time frame, we weren't called Compton Magic back then. We were called Team Reebok because that's what sponsored us. But it still was basically Compton Magic. It was all my Compton high school kids. So I was a high school coach.
Okay.
And we just played our high school team together. And that's where it started to form into, us making it into this thing that it's kind of morphed into at this point.
Right, and like I said in the intro, a true legend in the game. Why don't we start there? I mean, in '95, tell us how you guys started and what you were thinking at that time. What your goals were or whatever, and then how, like you said, it's morphed into something tremendous.
It was crazy because when we first started, me and my college roommate who played at UC Irvine together, he played Dominguez in Compton. His name is Rob Palmer. He's the assistant coach at UCLA now. At the time, we were roommates in college, and he was born and bred in Compton. I'm actually from Connecticut. I'm from New York, about 20 minutes away from the Bronx. But when I went to Irvine, me and him were roommates, and I didn't know anything about California. So whenever we had Thanksgiving or Christmas, I'd be in Compton with him and his family. So he was 2 years ahead of me. When he graduated, he went to teach in Compton. He taught in elementary school, and I was still in college. And when I graduated, we moved in together. And one of our old coaches had asked us if we wanted the Compton High job. That was in '93. And we took it. And at that point, we just started working with kids. We didn't have any good players. I mean, we had some good players, but it was more just whatever we had. It was social work, It was real kids, real gangsters, real dudes. And we started to build it. We recruited a little bit, got try to get the best kids in the city, the best kids out of the city. And at the time, Dominguez was, a national power. They were number one in the country. Tyson Chandler, Tayshaun Prince, Tommy Prince, Kenny Bruner, Jason Thomas, just a bunch. I mean, they were just loaded. We started to get good. Our first kid was Jeff Trepagna. He played in the NBA. Tito Maddox, David Hamilton, Ellis Miles, who played at Louisville. So we started to get loaded too. We weren't quite where they were, but we were close. And at the time, the city was just loaded with kids. It was just loaded. And so Dominguez was loaded, and we were loaded at Compton High. And what Dominguez would do is they would play their high school team called the Hood in summer basketball. So they had Tyson and all those guys playing AAU too together to build as a high school.
Right.
So we kind of emulated that model, did the same thing, and we got pretty good. And then our first sponsorship came along in Reebok, I want to say like in 95 or 96. And Jeff Trepanier was our first pro. Tito Max was our second pro. And so we had some pros in the 90s. And then fast forward to 2001, Adidas came in and signed us in 2001 till now. We're 20 years in at Adidas. But it all started really just, you know, we were two kids, man, just having fun, doing what we love to do. We both had jobs. Like I wasn't doing basketball full time like everybody else. I had a full-time job from 1993 till 2010.
Right.
I've only been basketball only for, you know, about 10 years now. But before that, I was suit and tie every day, just like everybody else. And then at nighttime, open the gym, go play with the kids, you know, just had a blast. So we really just, we started from the mud, man, just because we love to do it, help kids. And
right.
Then when I got with Adidas, it just kind of started to morph, and we got some players, and we ended up pulling some players from all over, and now it's from all over. And, you know, it's just become what it is today. But it started from, you know, really no intentions of it being what it is today.
Is where does Sonny Vaccaro come in that mix? Was he around for the Adidas switch?
He was. It's funny, like his transitions were crazy. So when he transitioned from Reebok to Adidas, we just went to Reebok.
Right.
When he transitioned out of Adidas, we had just came into Adidas. So like, it's funny. I mean, obviously I know who Sonny is, and you know, Gary Charles, who's a good friend of mine, is really tight with Sonny. And obviously Sonny's one of the guys that paved the way. I mean, he's the godfather to all this pretty much.
Right.
But I just never crossed paths with him. As I was going in, he was going out. As I was going in, he was going out. So obviously I knew who he was, because at that time, you know, we were nobodies, and he was running the game. He was running the game.
Right.
Like he was on top of the game. He was, you know, doing it probably as good or better than anyone's still ever done it. Right. So we were just trying to figure out who we were at that point.
Right.
And you played ball too, right? You went to
I played at UC Irvine. I played at UC Irvine. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So did you always, even back then, did you know you wanted to stay a part of the game, to you know?
Well, I'll
coach?
tell you this is the funny part. And so this is a crazy story that people don't know. So back in 1989, when I was a freshman at UC Irvine, my coach told me, he said, "Hey man, I'm gonna send you to this camp, and I want you to help us recruit these players at this camp." So I ended up going to work Superstar Camp in Santa Barbara. And at the time, that's the West Coast, you know, the pumps weren't around yet. Nothing was around yet. It was just the only thing they had was you had no ABCD, none of that. It was the West Coast version of those camps. You had BC All-Stars, which was back east, the BC All-Stars camp, the 5-star camp, and you had the Superstar Camp that was in California at Santa Barbara. So I went to work the camp, and actually two of my good friends were kind of running the camp, Alex and Ike Austin. You know, Ike Austin played for the Utah Jazz. Right. So when I pulled up to Santa Barbara and I saw them, I'm like, "What are you guys doing here?" And they were like, "We run this camp." I'm like, "Oh, cool." So we get there, and, you know, obviously they invited all these top kids, and all the coaches came in to watch them play. So I'm in this environment. I'm like, "Whoa, I love this." So we had all these counselors that were from all over you know, we had guys that played at Stanford, UCLA, they're all counselors. And, you know how dudes are in college. They're cool. They want to like hoop. They ain't trying to work. They ain't really trying to work. They just want to, you know, just have fun. Right. But me, when I seen like all that stuff going on, I was like, I'm about to work. So that was my freshman year in college. So I just went, and the owner of the camp, Alex, introduced me to, and I just went and just did whatever. They want me to go get food, go to the train station, go to the bus station, whatever had to be done. I was just waking pick kids up at 5 a.m., whatever I had to do, I was just doing. I was grinding. Right. Because I just love that environment. So I knew at that point that's what I wanted to do. And I was 18 or 19. And then that next year, when Alex and Ike went to the NBA, they hired me as head counselor as a sophomore in college.
Wow.
So then that's 1990. So then 1990, that's why I say 30 years. 1991, they made me vice president of the camp. I was a junior in college.
Wow.
So I was already running camps as a junior in college. That's where it started.
Right. You were destined for this.
I was destined.
It was it's in your blood. Absolutely.
It was in there. It was in there.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
So we had Gary Charles on a couple weeks ago. We got him with this. So we got to hit you with this. And for you, I don't know. I don't even know if you can do this, but we asked Gary his top 5 AAU guys of all time that he had. I don't know if you could do that, but I'm
Yeah.
gonna throw it out there to you.
AAU guys, AAU teams.
Well, I was thinking guys, but you
Yeah,
could,
your five best players.
Oh,
Top
five best players.
your
Yes.
players.
From the Compton Magic.
Oh, and my team?
Yes.
Oh, I can't do that, man. Yeah, I can't do that, man. A lot of people get upset. Hey, there's also, you know, so crazy. There's also like so many. I've been in 3 decades.
Right.
Right.
You gotta realize, like, the 3 decades of dudes. You know, different times. Social medias now, which kind of gives guys a little more push.
Yeah.
You know, then you have back in the day in the 90s, there was really no traditional AAU. You had powerhouse AAU teams. We weren't a powerhouse team. We were a mom and pop.
Right.
So even when we mom and popped, like my kids would go play for Pat Barrett. You know, they would play for SCA, who was really around back then and strong.
I remember them. Yep.
They would go play for teams like that. And because there was only like 2 or 3 sponsored teams in the West Coast, period. You know, AAU wasn't going like that. So then you get to the 2000s and it starts to get going. The shoe companies come in, they start sponsoring more teams. And then you get to now to where there's leagues and there's a plethora of teams that are sponsored. So obviously, like, you know, now there's so much more resources in AAU. 2000, the resources increased. There was no resources in AAU back in the 90s.
Right.
So like when you talk about the Riverside Churches of the world and those type of teams that were dominant, Atlanta Celtics, because they're the only team. Like they're the only team getting money. Right. So back then, I mean, like, you know, all the power players pay for those teams. So it's really hard to compare, especially programs and teams in different demographics of time. Because like in the 90s, the layout was so different than 2000s. And then even now in 2010, the layout's different.
Yeah,
so
talk about how that, like the social media, I know you have the top player, Mikey, who, what did he have, 2.5 million viewers? Like
he did a video with Drake yesterday. You see that?
Wow. I saw that.
I didn't see that. You too old. You didn't watch it.
Real.
Look,
I peeped that. I peeped it yesterday. Yes.
This dude is on an OVO video.
Right. So I mean, this is like game changing stuff in the sports industry. So how does you know, talk about that.
We'll just talk about Mikey real quick. So like the one thing is crazy is that, like, you know, I think the coolest thing that he did was that HBCU thing, and people aren't going to give it enough credit to what it really means, because when he said it, remember guys, like back in the East Coast, and people know HBCUs because there are a lot of them. Right. But we don't have them on the West Coast. We don't have HBCUs in the West Coast, right? They're all South, East, you know, that demographic. And, you know, when he said this is before like all the craziness. Like he said it like before it. And then we have all these things happen racially in our country that exclamate that statement. But my point to you is, like, you know, I don't know if he just got lucky to say that at the right time, but when he said it, you know, I was telling people I have a podcast, and my podcast, I interviewed him about it, and I just told him, like, you got 8 million hits on Twitter, you got 50 million on Instagram. Wow. Just the HBCU awareness that he raised. When now that this statement goes out and everyone's looking, half the people in the country don't even know what that means.
Right.
So they're Googling it, right? They're hitting Google. They're hitting Google search, whatever. What's HBCU? Right. You know, historical Black colleges and universities. Okay. You know, but it's like just that awareness factor, you know, and then you guys know, I don't know what plays into it, but then Netflix donates 120 million to HBCUs. I mean, like, I'm just telling you know, I'm just saying, like, the awareness part of that, to me, I thought was major. And as a 15-year-old, when he said it, because he said it when he was 15, he turned 16 in June. You know, it's just, he's on different stuff. I mean, I hope everything can, like, he's so popular right now. I hope that, because the basketball has to be a part of this too, you know. I hope it all can work together for him and make it, and just because if it all comes together for him, like, he could be the guy who does it different.
Yeah, like I was assistant coach with Sebastian Telfair with Juice All Star back in the days, and
that's another great team at one time.
Right, and his hype was unbelievable, but there was no the social media was not there. This Twitter and Instagram.
Well, listen, hey, so I was around. So I was there at the game when we played LeBron at 7 at UCLA, and then Sebastian played the game after. So like that was part of our event. So I really knew like the hype of him,
right?
Because we spent money to bring him to LA. So I knew I know the Sebastian Telfair deal.
Absolutely.
And he was as big as you could get.
Right.
Pre-social media.
Pre-social media. Absolutely.
Pre-social media, he's as big as you can get.
Yep.
Him, LeBron, like all those type of guys, you know, Carmelo. But Sebastian Telfair, as far as a guy who was never really a marquee NBA guy, is as big as the social media gets for a dude and a guard and a small guy. And I mean, like he was crazy, man. I remember I was around during those times. Heavy, so I remember that.
Right.
Do you worry about that aspect of it? Do you worry about the social media thing?
Absolutely. And the reason is because, like, you know, back in 2000, like I had a kid named Gabe York back in 2010.
I remember.
And he was
Arizona, right?
Yes. He was the pre-social media Mikey. Like he's coming in right to when social media was coming in, but he was hot as fish grease. Got MVP of Adidas Nations. Worked out with Derrick Rose and Russell Westbrook when they were coming. I mean, just it was so crazy hot. But it's like the social media. The hard part about it is that back then you could only be a guy if print media guys made you a guy. You had to be in print media. It couldn't be your grandmother, your auntie, your uncle, or your AAU dude or whatever hyping you.
Right.
So now the problem is that we all have some type of voice in this. Some of us have more powerful voices than others, right?
Right.
But it's like anybody can have a voice, which skews talent, which skews evaluation of talent.
Absolutely.
That's the problem. So back in the day, if it wasn't Van Coleman, Frank Burleson, Clark Francis, all them dudes, Tom Konchowski in New York, Bob Gibbons, whoever those guys are who were strong at the time, if it wasn't one of those guys anointing you, you weren't a guy.
Right.
And that's the difference. And it's hard because now you got it's a lot foggier. A lot foggier. And remember back then too, all the guys played on a couple of AAU teams. You could see them all. Like these guys, half these guys don't even see half the kids. They're all spread out. All these got 40 AAU teams on Adidas, 40 on Nike, 40 on Under Armour, and it's all spread out. So no, you can't see everybody.
So how do you see guys, or do they just come to you now? Like, how does it work for you?
So we're fortunate enough. Obviously, I would have to say we are one of the best AAU brands in the country. So we don't have to, we handpick our kids. We don't charge kids. We only have 3 teams at each age, 1 team in each age group, 17, 16, 15. So like we are very, very selective situation. And for me, I tell people all the time, it's like, our biggest victory to me was 2018 when I had the team with Isaiah Mobley, Onyeka, Evan Mobley. We'll have 2 top 5 picks off that team. Johnny Juzang, Jared Lucas, Jalen Clark, Isaiah Hill. And we were the undisputed number one team. We were pretty much the undisputed national champs that year because we were able to play the Nike team. But what I will say is that people don't understand, like the reason I say that team is special and different is because if you look at traditionally all the AAU teams, most of those teams, those kids never played on those teams the whole time. They play on different teams. So even if you look like the number one team of all time, they call SCA, Kevin Love, he started off on the Portland Legends. He finished on SCA. Brandon Jennings started on SCA and left and played on Belmont Shore at the end. So like it wasn't like those kids just played at that AAU program. Those kids that I'm telling you that on that 2018 team that we had have never wore another uniform. Never. So they came in the 8th grade and exited in the 12th grade with never putting on another uniform of another AAU program, not even when we weren't playing. So
they're homegrown.
Homegrown. So to me, it's a different it's different when you tell me, okay, yeah, we had these guys and then we went and pulled Derrick Rose, we pulled OJ Mayo, and we put them all together. That's an all-star team and that's a good team. But like arguably like our team was a team. Right. Like it wasn't like we had a couple kids that were top 20 in the country try to come. We turned them down.
Is that routine? Is that routine for you now? I mean, do all your guys?
Have to do that. We have to do that because what I think is this: is if I have a kid who commits to me in the 8th grade And even if he hasn't progressed like he should have, I got to be loyal to that kid. So we've had situations even this year, last year, where I've turned down last year, I turned down a top 10 kid. And the year before that, I turned down a top 10 kid. Reason being is because there ain't enough balls.
Right.
And we were still the number 1 team in the country without him.
Right.
So like even Adidas was asking me like, hey, you sure you don't want to take him? And I'm like, I got a great parent group, man. And, you know, part of the issue is the parents too. So like my locker room is tight. Like I can't disrupt that locker room. Right. And we end up winning the national championship without him. So we made the right call, because you throw him in there, who knows what happens, right?
So what do you feel about, like, it seems like you get most of your players by the time they get to 8th grade, that's pretty much the time where it's time to be on the circuit. How do you feel about the new phase of kids playing travel ball from 4th grade, 3rd grade, 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade? Like, what is your perception of that?
Just the overplaying. You know, it's like, so the best analogy is like I can use my daughter. So my daughter is 12 right now. She's 5'11". She's probably, like last year, she was the best player in California in volleyball, not basketball, volleyball. Okay. So like they had commitment day on Tuesday. And like we played on the number 1 team in the country last year, but we left that team. So everyone's calling me like, man, what do you do? Like, how can you leave that? You know, and I'm like, just for me, I was just kind of like, you know, like I just, like with the way things are right now, I just need more comfort and more diversity in my volleyball program. Volleyball is very Caucasian.
Right.
So, you know, we made a move that people will probably seem as less favorable. But, you know, like, and I would, like my daughter, she's 12, and I'm trying to figure out how to work her out. She wants to go to the gym every day, all day. I don't want her to overdo it on her shoulder, right? Because she's a big hitter.
Right.
But it's like you still want them to play. Like I just remember when I was a kid, we played in the concrete in Chuck Taylor's.
Right.
You know, I don't know if it's the food now that's making everybody like, you know, everyone's body a little weaker, but I played outside all day in the concrete.
Right.
When I lived in New York, you know, I mean, we didn't get in the gym. We played outside.
Right.
And like kids right now don't even play outside. I would have to think concrete is way harder on your extremities than. So I don't know, man. Like I'm torn with that comment because, you know, obviously I want the kids to be in there as much as possible to develop. And obviously I also want them to be safe. So It's kind of like and it seems like nowadays, like just bones are more brittle. You know, it just seems like that they don't hold up as well for whatever reason. You know, I don't know if it's the food now, I don't know. Because, you know, back in the day, we didn't have cancer. Now we have it. Right. You know, we didn't have those things. We had organic food we were eating. I mean, we ate from farms. Now we're eating processed food. So, you know, toxins in the environment, all that. So I don't have a great answer for that other than, you know, like, it's my kid. Like, I want her to be in the gym as much as possible. I'm trying to protect her, but I also want her to be great if possible.
Right.
It's a hard, like all you can do is try to do recovery, tell her to ice, she's growing fast. And I'm just using that analogy because it's my kid.
Right.
Right. You know, because you're going to do the best you can for your kid. Obviously everyone's doing that. And I consider all my players my kids too, but it's like, you know, think of LeBron, man, like he's never got hurt. Part of the reason he's the greatest player ever is because he's just taken unbelievable care of his body. He never got hurt. But, you know, I don't know, like, I don't think that he doesn't work out a lot.
Right.
Yeah. Seriously. What about this, the overall, I mean, you mentioned, you've been in this game forever. What do you consider the state of youth basketball AAU to be now, as you can, you know, you mentioned before, you know, you had super teams, you had less teams, you know, so the teams were just dominant now, but now, you know, people talk about there's a grassroots team on every corner now. So do you like it better now or then?
You know, like I'm fortunate that we've been able to thrive. Like obviously I did my program differently. A lot of guys in this AAU game, and the reason I could do that is I had a job. I wasn't pressed to make money. A lot of these guys are pressed to do things they're not supposed to do. So I think like what happens is I was fortunate enough early in my career in AAU to be able to take baby steps. I never went too fast. I never made decisions that didn't make sense. I never had to like do something to get $10,000 so I could travel. I didn't have to do that. I was fortunate enough to have the resources or use my own to not have to like succumb to stuff that wasn't right. So I baby stepped my program the whole way through till I got to 2008 when we started, 2007 when we started to get really good, 2008 where we had one of the best teams in the country, 2009, 2010. And we've been on a run since 2008, a really strong run since then. Probably we could have been national team of the year out of that decade at least 3 or 4 times. So we've had a pretty strong run from 2008. But I was prepared in 2008. That's the whole thing. I took 15 years to prepare. Like there were times early on in my career I could have done some dumb stuff and possibly jeopardize that, but I didn't. And even through my development from 2008 to now, I've taken baby steps. Like I had a period in 2015 where, you know, Under Armour came in and offered us a monster contract, probably the biggest contract in Grassroots. And, you know, we didn't take it and we stayed with Adidas. But at that point, 2015 was monumental because that was the first time where, like, you know, basketball could really be my job.
Right.
Where the resources were good enough for that. Before that, you know, it was just run a tournament to pay your bills. You know, that's what you're doing. You're hustling. But the state of today, man, like, you know, it's funny because we've been fortunate enough to have strong enough social media to make that whole, like, a lot of the guys right now that are older school that have good programs have to realize that, like, 2020 and beyond, and even 2015 and beyond is going to be different. You know, everyone is still talking that I got this player, he's top guy. The brands don't, like, look, do they want top guys? Yeah, but they're going to bid at them for the end. It doesn't, like right now for minorities and especially Black folk, racial equity, like this thing, you guys know about the Abbas thing, but finally we have a voice.
Right.
And everything moving forward, if you don't have cultural relevance to what you're doing moving forward, you're not gonna be relevant.
Right.
I don't care if you have, you know, Mikey Williams is different, but like any player that you have as top guy, will it keep you afloat? Yeah, but it's not gonna brand you.
Right.
You're gonna have to do other things. You're gonna have to bring other value. And I try to preach that to all of our AAU guys. I work for Adidas, so I try to preach that to our guys at Adidas and just tell them, hey, because they'll call, hey, I got so-and-so. I go, that's cool. It's great. But, you know, the reality of it is so-and-so ain't selling shoes. Basketball shoes don't sell anymore. You know, if anybody is signing a James Harden or even a LeBron or a Kyrie Irving or a Damian Lillard, they're signing them for culture. They're pushing culture. Like, people aren't buying. People don't walk around in basketball shoes anymore like they used to. They got Vans and they got all these alternative Yeezys and whatever else people are walking around in. And, you know, most athletes' signature basketball shoes aren't a high point of sales, no matter what they're paying those guys. So if you look at it from that perspective, you'll understand that when you have your AAU program, which is supposed to be a charity and nonprofit, giving back to kids and the community and all those type of things, your AAU program better embed community, and it better embed all those things that the neighborhood embeds. Because I don't think that you're ever going to get any real resources if you don't just absolutely engulf yourself in culture. If you don't do that, resources ain't coming.
Yeah, one thing I respect about you and your program, we did some research. You are deeply embedded in the Compton community. You work with the McKinley School with doing donations.
So legacy program, yeah.
Yeah. So much respect to you and what you're doing in the communities. Can you talk about that and what made you, you know, go about that? Like, what's your vision for that?
So we always, obviously, when we first started, we were just in the community, just doing social work. That's really what it was. It really was a social project in the 90s. We never had any resources until, I would say, you know, 2013, 14, that range. We started our tournaments are booming and we're getting better, and the brand was getting behind us a little bit more. But in 2013, when we were National Program of the Year that year, I sat back and I said, you know, we're doing basketball at the highest level. How are we going to make our company, our nonprofit, real? And how can we improve it Like we can, obviously we're going to continue to do what we do in basketball. Well, we had basketball running, basketball was going. And so in my mind, I'm like, you know what we're going to do is this. We're going to take, as soon as we're done in July, starting in September to all the way to January before when basketball starts, all we're going to do is community service. We are just going to dive into the hood and just find stuff to do that makes sense for us. And so we started doing that in 2013. And what happened was, I don't know how much work you guys do in the community, but when you get in the community, what happens is, you start doing work. So we went to Salvation Army. That was one of the first places we went. And I went there actually really just to reserve the gym for one of my guys. So I walk in there and it's actually right in one of it's Jeff Trepanier's old neighborhood, Santana Block. And that's one of the reasons I went there, because he's one of our first guys and I wanted to go in his neighborhood. So I went to his neighborhood, went to the Salvation Army there. And I was talking to the sports director about the gym. So, I don't know if you guys know Salvation Army, but Salvation Army has a lot of different layers, right? It's church.
Yep.
They have a lot of school programs. There's a lot of things going on in Salvation Army. So when I went in there, it was a Monday, and I smelled food, and I was like, damn, what are they doing? So he goes, hey, we have a thing called the Love Kitchen. And I was like, well, what is that? He goes, well, every Monday we have a warm cooked meal for the homeless people in this area. It's every Monday. And then every Wednesday we do a sack lunch. I said, whoa. And in my mind, I was like, wow. Like, in my mind, I'm thinking, wow, that probably costs like hundreds of thousands of dollars. Like, how do you do that if you're feeding people every Monday of the year and Wednesday?
Right.
I was like, if I could ask you, what's that cost? And he was like, you'd be surprised. Like, people donate stuff, and we hustle, and like it probably costs about $15,000 to $20,000 a year to do the whole program. I was like, what? So I wrote a check that day, jumped in. Like that day I was like, whoa. So I went and I experienced it. The people come in from the street, they sanitize them, they feed them, they do a little bit of church. They kind of like talk to them. And, a lot of them are the people who obviously have chemical issues, right. Mental needs too. And they talk to them, they feed them, and it's like, 50, 60 people. And so I just fell in love with that program. So I jumped all the way in. But the next year I was sponsoring the whole program and making my kids come down and fit and do that. So, and once you do that, you get in there and you start working, and then all these people that are volunteering, they all have their own programs. Yeah. So they see the Count the Magic in there. Oh, we seen you. Like, can you come help us? Can you come help us? And so you used to start finding all these authentic, because for me, like, I didn't want to do any social work, just writing checks. I wanted to do social work where my hands was on it, where our hands was on it, where our kids got to learn from it. So everything that we do in the hood, like, we are absolutely hands-on. So like, that was the first time I just jumped in on that. And we just sponsored the whole program for the last 3 years. We sponsored that, and we did it too. So I made the kids go down there. You'll see some of our stuff on our social media. Our kids are there. Like, even our kids that don't live in Compton, they come and work it. Right. But when you start diving into the community, like, good community work will find you. You don't even have to find it. Absolutely. You just get in there, and then you can gauge to like how you want to be involved, the level of involvement. Like, we got involved with Shields for Families, and we've done some awesome stuff. Diaper drives, book drives. We've done awesome stuff with them because they stay in the hood. They're in Watts, Compton, LA, and all they do is just anything that goes bad in the hood, they address it. And they're a company. They have funding and all that, but we partner with them on a lot of events. But it's just when you get in the neighborhood and you start doing stuff, it just finds you, like, stuff that you want to do, good stuff. And just, there's so many needs in the community, especially our community in Compton is, there's a lot of needs there. So if you're trying to do community work, it's not hard to find it. Absolutely.
Absolutely. It reminds me of when I was coaching at Bishop Loughlin High School. We used to go to this hospital where I took our kids, where they saw kids, people that were paraplegic from gun wounds, and we also donated food. So, as a coach, that goes hand in hand. Especially as a Black coach, I felt the need and it was imperative for me to do that. So I give you respect for that. Absolutely.
Is that also part of what you mean by culture? Because when you hear the word
Absolutely.
culture, you think like music and this and videos and all that kind of stuff. But when you say culture, you mean the real.
I mean the real culture. And don't get me wrong, like, I'm not gonna say that, like, we did an NBA YoungBoy collab. Like, I'm not gonna say that we don't.
Right.
Yeah, we ain't jumping in that
Yeah,
either. But
yeah.
what I will tell you, the culture is what I mean is community. That's what I mean. And don't get me wrong, you can sprinkle it in with some music because that doesn't never hurt.
Right.
Hey, Jason Taylor played with us. I mean, the game play, you know, like we throw that in too. But
oh, the game played with y'all, huh?
Yeah. So Game is Jeff Trepagne's best friend. So like when he was, this is a long time ago, back when he was, before he was Game, he was Jason back then.
Okay.
Was he nice?
Yeah, he's athletic as hell.
Mm-hmm.
He's bouncy as hell. He's really bouncy. So, but yeah, it's crazy. Like I didn't even know he was a rapper. And I looked in Vibe magazine one day. I was in the bathroom looking. I looked at Vibe and I saw Rihanna. This was back when Rihanna was first coming out. It was like the introduction to new artists.
Right.
And it was like Rihanna and The Game. And I looked, I go, that Jason, I never heard him say rap. You know, so it's crazy where kids evolve to after they leave you. You never know. Like obviously when he left Compton and he had some times, and I think he evolved into what he evolved into from after high school. Because in high school, you know, he was just a high school kid, normal kid.
Right.
You know, I never would have guessed he was a rapper. Right. You know, he didn't rap around us.
No, it's interesting because, you know, in, you know, AAU coaches or programs, I mean, a lot of times, you know, it seems like the most successful programs are the people that are in it for, you know, way more than basketball. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, what advice do you give, you know, younger guys trying to come up, trying to create programs, you know, how to create a successful one? I
just think that, like, you have to do it for the right reasons. And I think that there's certain people that have different reasons. Like now that I'm kind of at a corporate level and I have some input, you know, I'm looking for guys that are well-rounded. I'm looking for guys that are in it for the right reasons, guys that, you know, because you tend to make the better decisions when you're in it for the right reasons.
Right.
Yeah, when you're in it for the wrong reasons, usually, like if you're in it to get on a guy or to tag to your guy to the NBA or just to, like, there's a lot of guys that I can look at a team and it's funny, like these new teams come in and like I can just look at them and say, I don't care, like if you got an NBA player attached to it or not, you're never going to compete with me. You're just not. You know why? Because you're not in it for the right reasons. You're in it because you want to go to the club with your guy.
Right.
And you just do the job.
Right.
You know what I mean? I'm really in this thing. Right. Like when I tell you I'm involved at every second of most of my kids' lives, whether they're Evan Mobley or whether they're Jared Lucas, it doesn't matter what level they're at. Like I'm involved at all levels with all my kids, like as much as physically possible, to where, you know, my family probably is like, dang, like, what's up? You know, so if you ain't in it like that, you're gonna have a hard time competing against me.
Right.
Not gonna be competitive. I don't care who you're bringing in. I don't care. Like, if people say LA, I'm like, okay. Like if you're not all the way in this thing in the mud, like, cause I'm all the way in. And now that I'm not working a full-time job and this is my job,
it's over.
Like, you better be serious about this.
And you got more teams. It's not just Compton Magic, right? It's not, you have teams outside of California,
okay,
right?
So, you know, we have a team in Memphis, which but we've had that for a long time. And we have a team in Louisville because, you know, the kid Ellis Miles, who played at Louisville for me, went and started the Magic in Louisville. But those were organic feeds. It wasn't like we were trying to branch out.
Oh,
like,
okay.
you know, we weren't going. It wasn't like I was going, hey, we want to do teams in every city in the country. No.
Right.
It was people that were involved in my organization that took it somewhere else. So I'm not trying to go and be in everybody's city and do that. I'm not doing none of that. I'm just trying to be the best me that I can be, and I'm comfortable being that.
Right.
I'm comfortable being that. But for the guys that are coming up and trying to do this, just know that it's a new game. I mean, you could have good players, and the next year you could lose your deal.
Right. Which we've seen that.
It happens all the time. It's gonna happen more. It's gonna happen a lot more now because, again, if you don't understand the matrix, even Nike, Adidas, Under Armour, like, you know, they're not just going to be signing guys just for one player. I mean, you're going to have some depth in your program. You're going to have to have you're going to have meaning in your program. If you don't have those things.
Yeah, I've heard that infrastructure of programs is very important going forward after the scandals that have happened. You know, is that correct?
So you guys know, like at Adidas, obviously we were the forefront of that. We were the brand that had to go through that. And unfortunate because there's a lot of innocent people that got affected by that.
Most.
And you know where it mostly happened is it happened not because what happened. It happened because now that the light was shined on us, they had to do a complete full audit of everything, right? So they're going through everything that we've ever did in Grassroots. So, I mean, like, and you do that, and things can be perceived certain ways. It might have not been like, if you perceive that, you might perceive it as being something that was negligent, but it might have not been negligent at the time.
Right.
So, I mean, like when I'm saying it becomes a witch hunt at that point, you know?
Right.
Maybe it was needed. So now that people can hopefully understand that, like, you know, you're not gonna be able to get crazy like you used to, you know, and part of the reason that I'm still there, I'm one of the only guys left standing because I baby stepped. I didn't fall for that. You know, I didn't get it. Like whatever those guys had going on, I mean, like, you know, and I'm not saying it was right or wrong. I don't, you know, I just wasn't involved with it. So, you know, I just think that with that FBI case, and then you got the Michael Avenatti, you know, you got the little Nike thing that was going on or whatever, but hopefully it shows guys, you know, that, you know, you can do things the right way, and you still can do things the right way and get resources. Like, you know, our deal, we're on a 5-year deal right now, and I feel that when we re-up, we'll be in a really good situation. But you can do things the right way and make things work. You don't have to always cut corners.
Right.
You know,
how will the circuit look? Like, do you think that you know, from what happened, that the circuit will look a whole lot different going forward?
Well, it's going to be interesting to see. For us, I think we're going to be very similar to what we were last year. So we're not going to change much. I don't think Nike's going to change much. Under Armour is the one we'll see what they do because, you know, their stock's been hurting. So we'll see if they continue to be put as much money into Grassroots as they have. And if they do, they'll probably be similar too. But still, like moving forward after this COVID and pandemic, it's like I'm sure that people are looking to cut resources across the board.
Of course.
It doesn't make sense. You know what I mean? So that, with that being said, you know, now that you know that all the companies are going to cut resources, that's probably, I would say, fair to say, you better be on your A game if you want to be in the business.
Yep.
About the overall rep of, you know, Grassroots, AAU, obviously gets a bad rap. People say, you know, that's the problem with basketball is AAU, and you know, basically, you know, turning a blind eye to even the scandal was a college basketball thing. You know, how do you know, what is your view on AAU? Should we believe the rap that's out there?
You know what's crazy? So this is the funny thing, because like I'm the one AAU guy in my area that I'm tight with all my high school coaches. Like I work directly hand in hand with my best players' teams. I'm not the guy who's like sneaking in at a game and talking to the parents in the back. Like I'm the guy who's like, you know, embracing these dudes. I run high school events too. So I'm taking care of my high school coaches too. But the one thing that really drives me nuts, drives me crazy, is that there's only a couple guys in AAU that can really make money. The thousands of guys that are doing AAU are doing it for free. Most of them are doing it for free or spending their own money. There's probably a handful of guys in this country, I'm fortunate to be one of them, that can make money doing kids basketball. Most guys are not making money. Everyone thinks that everyone's making money. The thing that drives me nuts is, and I'll tell you, I'm not going to say the coaches that I said this to, but I have to have this conversation all the time with college coaches. And what I tell them is this. I said, hey, man, like, I hope that you're not one of these guys. Because last year when my team won in Vegas, we won the whole, the Fantastic 40, we won that little national championship. My van, I was driving the van with the kid that you're going to make $1 million on, because you get paid. I don't. You get paid. I don't. The van breaks down in Bardstown. Midnight. I got 8 kids in the van. I'm 50 years old. And I do well. Like, I'm not like, I'm driving the van with 8 kids, 4 of them going to the Pac-12, which means they have 4 coaches that are all making millions, right? I'm changing a flat on a 15-passenger van at midnight in Barstow. And I don't get paid. You do. So the thing is that really drives me crazy is that, do you understand how hard I had to work so that you can keep your $1 million? That I don't get anything from. Like, we can talk about TJ Leaf, Ike Anigbogu, Lonzo Ball, Kobe Paris, UCLA's #1 recruiting class that year, all 4 Magic kids. That team was a rock star team.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
So what does it take to get those kids there? We don't get anything. Like, but you're mad at us?
Right.
like my point to you is I went to the NCAA one day, and I walked in the office. I was seeing TJ at the Pacers. I went to go watch him play, and I just said, I'm going to pull up on the NCAA. Pulled up. Went there, and they caught me in a room, and I said, and they said, hey, just tell us about what you think. And I'm like, can I speak candidly? And I told them, I said, like, you guys are looking at me some type of way when I don't get paid a dime. So when your guy came to my tournament, which is a legal way, he saw I had the balls playing against Compton Magic. The gym was full. We're making, you pay $15 to get in like everybody else. Like, how come I can't be getting it the right way?
Right.
That's how I make my living, right? On tournaments and events. So I'm doing well, but how come I can't be doing well the right way? How come it has to be that I'm doing everything like goofy or doing something funny style? How come I can't be making 6 figures doing tournaments and doing things the right way, which is what I do, right? But what drives me nuts is that this whole economy, the NCAA, the coaches, all these guys who all get paid, try to point the finger and blame us, the guys who don't get paid. How about that? How about like, and again, I said there's only a handful of guys in the country that can get money doing youth basketball. I know everyone thinks that everyone's getting money, but it's completely not true. Most guys are spending their own money to deal with their AAU teams.
Absolutely.
But they want to slander us, even the high school coaches. It's like, you guys want us to drive the kids, talk to the coaches, spend our money, get the shoes, go to all these meetings, do all this stuff, and then you want to talk smack about us, and you won't even take the kids to a tournament.
Right.
So, like, I don't know, man. Like, they don't want to get me in that room in that argument because it's going to be a bad day. Because it's like most guys, for the most, I mean, don't get me wrong, there's bad apples in every walk of life. Right. But I mean, there's also great apples in every walk of life. And the AAU's the same. There's good dudes. There's bad dudes. There's awesome dudes. But for the most part, you have a bunch of guys who think they're doing the right thing and spending their own money on kids. You can't, like, I don't know how you can be mad at that. Like, don't get me wrong. There's a couple guys that are going to make it look bad for everybody. But that's not the majority of what's going on in youth sports or youth basketball. Youth basketball is mostly a bunch of guys who either want their child or other people's children to do well and are trying to facilitate that.
And
by any means necessary.
Do you think the rep comes from the fact that most of the guys that are facilitating are black coaches, young brothers in the street that know these brothers from an authentic relationship standpoint?
And I think that what happens is that they glorify all the things that went wrong. It's easy to do that, as opposed to like looking at some of the stories like even LeBron. Like LeBron kept his whole camp around him the whole time. You know what I mean? Like, and that's been a storybook ending to what they started in the hood.
Yeah.
And they used to talk about it at least in a negative way.
They tried to.
Right.
Until he broke all the barriers.
Right.
And they still try.
And the most of the time is the guys that are safe are the guys that come from the more affluent backgrounds and stuff like that. But they always want to kill the kids that come from the hood and make it. And that's why LeBron's going to transcend all that for everybody, because he was the one that went against the grain. Everyone said it couldn't happen, did it right. He's building schools. He's,
Yeah, he's an icon.
Like, it's crazy, man. Like at the end of the day, I love Michael Jordan, and don't get it twisted. It's hard for me to say, but like LeBron, as far as a sportsman,
right, overall.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it. A sportsman. I'm a Michael Jordan guy when it comes to.
Me too.
On
I
the
wasn't
court.
a fan
Me too.
of him off the court, but on the court, there's nobody that I felt was better than Mike, and I still don't feel like that. I still feel like that, but LeBron has passed Mike probably 2 times over when it comes to what he's done in the culture.
And that has to be added in.
Yeah,
Right.
that's huge. That's
Right.
huge.
At the Last Dance is cool. That's a hoop flick.
Yeah, that's a hoop flick.
Right. It'd be like talking about Muhammad Ali and just talking about boxing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
I mean, for me, I'm along those lines, man. For me, I want to sit back and see how that I can make my legacy go as far as it can, and not just touching basketball kids. That's why we're doing legacy programs, and we're doing programs in schools and stuff like that, because now that we're good in basketball, I'm going to use basketball as a tool
Absolutely.
to further that legacy, because that's what I'm good at.
Yep.
Right.
Well,
but my goal is to touch legacy in all different forms of life, though, not just basketball too.
Well, speaking of that, you mentioned ABIS. You got involved with that. I'm really interested to see how a grassroots program can contribute to that and to the sport overall and exert some leverage because you talk about the talent. I mean, you are the source of the talent. So how can you create leverage from where you are?
So part of the reason I think they brought me in this group is because I might be one of the more powerful voices to the kids. That's part of the reason Gary brought me in. Because you have all these powerful people, right? You got Vivian Stringer, Nikki Fargas at LSU, Dave Lato at DePaul, Joe Jones at Yale, Leonard Hamilton, Florida State. You have all these iconic, powerful Black coaches who are part of this group, who all have, unique voices and unique journeys and all these different things that can really help us promote and advocate for racial equity, right? So, like, you look at us as kind of the little guys, right? Because those are the power players. But remember this, they're all those guys are a different generation, and their generation, how do I say? Like, our generation is very social media, very media savvy. Their generation isn't.
Right.
So the grassroots portion of this, which is the portion of this that can help them keep their jobs, right? The portion of this that can speak their voice to the world, because most of these guys really don't even know how to operate on social media, right? Which is the kids and us. The grassroots can be a very, very strong part of what ABIS is doing, because I think that could be the voice, right? I think you have all these powerful people that can come up with all these great concepts. They have all these people that can help. They can attack the voting thing. They can attack all these different things that, like Leonard Hamilton. Like, Leonard Hamilton was around in Jim Crow. Like, he was like one of the first. He was one of the first Black assistant coaches back in like 1967. There was like 3. Him, George Raveling, and I forgot the other guy. But, Leonard Hamilton has been around through the whole run of this thing from day one. He is an OG of college coaching.
Right.
Coaching the league too. So you have these guys, man, that got a lot of influence. They got a lot of contacts. They got a lot of power and influence, and they can really do a lot for the advancement of Blacks in sports. But then I think you need to bridge that with people like me that can get that powerful, whatever it is you get to get some of these guys, that powerful voice that you have, and we take your voice and tell the whole younger world about it, which also makes you more popular.
Right.
Probably helps you get kids and whatever else. But, like, I think the best thing that can happen here is that, for the most part, like, a lot of grassroots guys and a lot of college coaches, a lot of stuff goes bad along the way. And this is a great time for all of us to unite, regardless of what our differences are, or what they have been. Like, it's sad. It's sad to say that, like, the George Floyd incident, had to make this possible. I always say that we were always doing this anyway, because at the Condom, we've been doing the community work before that happened. You know, when all the protesting was going on, I was like, that's awesome. But it's like, we've been doing that.
Right.
So the great part about, sorry, my phone is going bananas.
We do that. We edit it and everything, so it's all good.
Oh, cool. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
My phone's going bananas. All right. So, yeah, but it's crazy because that, like, all the protesting and all that is going on. And I just felt like we were always doing that. And I feel like, you know, it took George Floyd to make us want to be friends. You know, it's crazy. Like, and like, I'm not going to say that, like, I'm not friends with some of those coaches that are on our panel, because I'm friends with all of them. I know them all because I'm old school. They may have never got one of our players. Most of them have. But it just, like, brings a different part of awareness for all of us. And I think it can unite a lot of people of color, Black and Hispanic alike, to get to common goals, man. And that doesn't mean that, you know, you have to exclude everyone else, but it just puts us in a place finally where we have more of a voice people are going to listen to. With the powerful voices we have in ABIS, we're going to be able to, I think, get a lot done. So, you know, kudos to Gary and Felicia Allen for putting together this all-star team of all the Black head coaches, and male and female, bringing them together to try to be the voice in racial equity in sports.
And even with the Mikey Williams thing, when he announced that HBCU, you know, when he put that on social media, were you surprised by that, or is that something you had talked to him about?
No, you know, it's funny. He's talked about it, but not major. So yeah, I was surprised.
Mm-hmm.
And I was surprised that it ran like it did. You know, it just went nuts, which was awesome. I mean, like, and, you know, I have kids at HBCUs. It's crazy. I got my kid, Isaiah Bailey was at Florida A&M. And he had a great career there. He was a senior there last year. And one of my kids went to Alabama State with Mo Williams, Daryl Jackson this year. So we have some HBCU kids from Count the Magic that are in HBCUs. One of my other kids also went to Winston-Salem State.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, you know, we've been fortunate to be able to send a couple kids to HBCU. And, you know, it's really like the Mikey Williams thing with HBCU was great, because all those HBCUs went and offered him, which also closed the gap, because they usually don't deal with West Coast kids as much. They don't recruit West Coast kids. And like, when that happened, all those schools started recruiting all my kids.
Right.
That's good.
Which goes to the awareness, like you were saying.
No, well, how about this? So Daryl Jackson goes to Alabama State, and Zion, one of my kids, Zion Sutton, goes to South Carolina State. Boom. 2 kids immediately, HBCU, off this year's team. So it had immediate effects when he made that comment. I'm not saying they chose those schools because of that, but what I'm saying is those schools now, when he makes that comment, the HBCUs start to look into the West Coast a little more, and now our kids have that opportunity.
Right.
And they start. I think I'm getting a little feedback. Do you get feedback?
That's me. My phone can't. I'm telling you, my
Okay.
phone's. I got NBA dudes calling me. Freaking Mike is crazy right now.
Yeah. And the fact that Mikey put himself out there as one of the top kids in the country, it gives permission for others to start thinking like that.
Right.
Yep. And McCurr-Maker did the same thing.
Right.
McCurr-Maker did a big step.
Absolutely. And
That's
called
good.
out Mikey and said, "Come on."
Nah, he made the big. I mean, that was big, because, you know, he's a high major guy, and he went to Howard. I mean, he really did the deal. So, you know, kudos to him too.
Absolutely.
And that's kind of where you guys, you know, Grassroots comes in, because you know, to make a big imprint, you need, it's almost like like the Fab Five back in the day. You get a bunch of kids to do it together, that could change everything.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not, not to force people to go somewhere, but just, just thinking about that, it's a possibility.
Yeah. No, it's exactly, just like you said, it just opens up this door.
Mm-hmm.
And when he opened up that door, it was crazy, man, because it's like it affected our program immediately. Now, Mo Williams was at Northridge, so he knew Daryl, he knew DJ. So when he got the job at Alabama State, you know, it made sense. But still, the South Carolina State, like, he didn't know us.
Right.
So he goes and gets Zion Sutton from Westchester off Compton Magic. So now we got 2 Compton Magic kids off this year's team at HBCUs.
Beautiful.
So before we let you get out of here, we know you couldn't give us your top 5 all time, which we understand. You know, you had so many guys, but who's up next? Who are the guys, the young guys you got that you really think are going to do some big things?
So you want to know, like, the draft guys or the high school guys, or both?
Both.
So we have Onyeka Okongwu in this draft. He's born and bred Compton Magic, Chino Hills, played with Lonzo Ball. He will be, in my opinion, between 3 and 9 in this draft, probably somewhere between 3 and 9. He's going to be a lot better than people think. He had a great year this year at USC. Didn't shoot any jump shots, but he can shoot it. So right now we've been working on that. We've been working on his NBA three-point shot. We've been working on his ball handling, and I think people are really going to be surprised at what they see with him. And I think that the reason he has so much value in this draft is because he might be the most ready in this draft to contribute right away. He may not have the upside of some of the other guys, but he is going to be probably the most ready to step in right away and play. And I think people will be surprised at what they're going to see with him. So we're just excited for him and his journey. And it couldn't happen to greater people. His mom, Kate, and you know, he lost his brother in a skateboarding incident a couple years ago. And it's a really good story. But he's like my son. So, you know, I'm just spilling with joy for him.
So 3 to 9. So Scott Perry, and you hear that? Walt Perrin, Nick.
Yeah.
Leon Rose and them.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think the Knicks aren't from 3 to 9. I know they're in there, but they're not they're not a team I think that's looking at him as much.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Makes sense for the Knicks.
Yeah.
You sound like a proud father though, man. Congrats.
Oh man, I'm a proud father of all these guys. And then next year we got the Mobley brothers next year. You know, Evan Mobley, who will have a chance to be the number 1 pick. He'll be between 1 and 5. His brother, who should be a first-round pick. And we have a couple other kids, Jalen Hill at UCLA and Timmy Allen at Utah, who will all probably be in next year's draft. We could have 4 in next year's draft. And they all obviously have unique talents, and they're all like kids' sons to me. And we're just gonna have a miraculous run right now as far as the draft is concerned. And even our young kids, Kajani Wright and Dylan Andrews and a bunch of younger kids we have in the program right now that have a real legit shot. You know, Kajani's top 10 in 2022, Dylan's top 20 in 2022. Right.
That's a run.
So we're gonna have a major run. And there's other guys too, Johnny Juzang, Jalen Clark. We have other guys in college basketball that I'm not mentioning because they might not be in next year's draft. They could be. Who knows how their year goes? But this year being really weird, I don't know. But like those guys will eventually be in the draft too. So our draft run over the next 4 to 5 years is going to be insane. This year we'll have 5 kids in the last 3 years in the NBA get drafted.
Wow.
Which is a pretty big number. And then we're gonna have an onslaught more moving forward. So our draft run over the next, from 2017 to, because that's that draft. We had 3 kids in that draft. We had Jordan Bell in that draft, TJ Leaf, and Ike Anigbogu in that draft. We had 3 kids in that draft in 2017. 18 we had Jalen Hands, and then this year we'll have so that's 5 in the last 3. But it could be a miraculous run in the draft.
Already has been, sounds like.
Right. Yeah, but it's gonna for sure continue.
Right. Yeah. Well, man, we really appreciate it, man. Thanks for taking the time out of your busy schedule.
The West Coast legend, brother. Thank you, brother.
Anytime. Let me know, guys. Appreciate y'all.
Yes, sir. Compton Magic in the house. Thank you, brother.
Etop Udo-Ema.
Molly
Thank
Ball.
you so much. Appreciate it. You're great. Appreciate that, man. We'll be in touch, and good luck with everything.
Hey, y'all.
All right. All right.
Yeah.
That was he's doing his thing out there, man.
He's doing his thing. Yep.
Big time out there. Hope you enjoyed that episode of Up Next. We keep them coming. Khalid out there, he ain't playing around. You ain't playing around out here with getting these guys.
Nah, I'm tagging them. I'm calling. We're gonna get the best of the best on our podcast. Make sure you go to our Instagram page, Up Next. Follow Up Next Instagram page, where we feature some of the top players from all over the country, whether it be basketball, baseball, football, tennis, soccer. If you're good at Skelly,
Word. They still play Skelly?
yeah, I think they might still play Skelly.
They still playing that?
If you do double dutch, we'll highlight you.
Right. No question. No question. Yeah, definitely check us out on social media. It's on Instagram at Up Next Pod, and Twitter is at Up Next _pod. So definitely follow us on both those mediums. We're up and running as far as being on all the podcast networks. Check us out on Apple Podcasts. Check us out on Spotify. Check us out on Stitcher or wherever you listen to your podcast. And on Apple Podcasts, write us a review, rate the show, because that creates even more traffic. And also tell a friend. If you like the show, tell a friend. Subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and all that good stuff. And we'll keep bringing you the heat.
Right. And for all the people that have followed us, we appreciate your support.
No doubt about it. So until next week, we're keeping an eye out for who's up next.
Absolutely.